Good morning, everyone. With me on the phone is Lismore City Councillor and Rouse City Councillor, Rouse County Councillor, Big Rob. Thanks so much for making it on the show today, Big Rob.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me, I know that you've had a policy of not doing too much media. I think you called it fake news. What has made you decide to flip on that and now have a radio segment on Richmond Valley Radio?
Oh, it's a guest segment, so it's on the long lunch with Nora Vidler-Blanksby. She's been asking to speak to me or for me to appear since I became a councillor and even before that. And I've always, most media I've just brushed off saying fake news, no comment as a standard response, obviously using the Trumparian comment. But the reason for that is because over the years, I think I've been misrepresented, misquoted, and many, many times by a media that has, I guess, different politics to what I do. And I just got sick of it. So I said, if you can't I still did live stuff. So I did some radio stuff, especially in Sydney stations after the floods and all that. But if it's live and I can't be misquoted or put out of context, I'm happy to do it. But I've decided to get back on and do it now because I think there's a lot of misinformation and a lack of information out there. So I'm trying to address that.
Yeah, it seems like you've made some big decisions. I saw on your Facebook, your unofficial Facebook page, that you're distancing yourself from Mayor Steve Krieg, whose ticket you're on to get into council. What made you decide to have that decision?
Well, I wasn't on Steve Krieg's ticket. Steve Krieg's ticket, 5 other people got on there. So Mayor Krieg became the mayor, and 5 more of the people in his group got on. We did have a preference arrangement with each other, but I got more preferences from the Labor Party than I did from the Krieg ticket because they got 6 on, or 5 on from the ticket plus the mayor. So they used up nearly all the votes that they got, so there was no preferences to give. But I'm not distancing myself from the Krieg ticket or the councillors. I'm just we have different opinions. We're all, I'm truly independent, and the councillors on the Krieg ticket are meant to be all independent, and we're going to see that probably this year, especially because some decisions are going different ways, and the team is, I guess, a little bit fractured. We're all aligned on the major topics, on major things, I believe, but there is some differences, and that's what we need to address to try and get things progressing. And some of the big ticket items, that's where they're most evident because there's some differences that need to be addressed before they can progress. One example is North Lismore Plateau.
Okay, interesting. I mean, I thought for sure there would have been a distancing. In some of your comments, you say Mayor Steve Krieg did quite recently publicly suggest sacking the council and installing an autocratic dictator in its place, implying a complete lack of faith in his own team and of council as a whole. You say, I have lost all confidence in Mayor Steve Krieg for this and many other reasons. We've done almost nothing for flood survivors because of our leadership. To me, that's fighting words, but do you not feel that way?
Yeah, I do. So this is why the program's going to be called Big Rob Uncensored, because I'm going to share the views I normally share on my own Facebook and in my own personal life. I'm going to be sharing on the radio, I guess. Those words related to some comments the mayor made on radio, I guess, and in a publication, printed media. And I believe they were completely inappropriate because, it's the council. I had a discussion yesterday with something about being dysfunctional. Right? I did an interview with Nora, actually, which will be aired later today. We wanted to let you do this radio interview first because you asked me to. But so in that discussion, I talk about how my opinion on whether or not the council is going to be put into administration, and that requires a dysfunctional council. And a dysfunctional council is not one where the councillors are arguing and debating. That's called democracy. There's going to be differences of opinion at all times. What a dysfunctional council is one that can't make decisions. And we make many, many decisions. The overwhelming majority of stuff that comes through council meetings is decided and resolutions are passed and we move on. The ones that get the main attention is what causes what people to think there's dysfunction. So when the council's put into administration, they sack the governing body, which is the councillors, and they usually sack the general manager, which is the head of the administration, and they put in a autocratic ruler who then dictates whatever that person wants. We don't know who that person will be, and their first task is, as we see in many other councils that have been put into administration, their first task is often to raise rates substantially and buy their way out of trouble. Well, I think we're doing pretty well at the moment. Started last term under Michael Donnelly, and the financials were being looked at, and the way spending and decisions were made has changed substantially, and we're looking good. And believe it or not, since the flood, we've had a lot of funding and support for things that we needed to do before the flood that have now been done with the state government support, and we're looking good financially going forward. And I think in that respect, I think we're going to go very well this year.
I guess I understand what you're saying, that you're making decisions, but I think there has been generally, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like you have this same frustration when you say we have done almost nothing for flood survivors because of your leadership. The lack of land that's been made available to put these pods, I think it's received a lot of attention as being a lack of Lismore City Council to take appropriate action. Do you feel that's the case?
Well, I do, and I've been very open about that. I tried to get some things done. I've put motions along there that weren't seconded or supported, but that's just the way politics is, I guess. But when it comes to the housing, the only things that Lismore Council is copping a beating, as in the governing body, the councillors for this. We have no say in what happens with emergency pods. We have no say in what happens with housing. We don't have any money to do it. It's going to be the emergency pods was being done by Resilience New South Wales, and the housing is to be done by the Northern Rivers Reconstruction Corporation. So, we even tried to, once we knocked back Hepburn Park and Clifford Park, we tried to get everyone in the room to move forward, find a way moving forward using private land or other land. But, that meeting was cut short for whatever reason. We only really spoke to Resilience. The reason, the main reason that I refused Hepburn Park, on top of the overwhelming lack of support from the public, is that they're going to spend millions of dollars to establish anything there. They're telling us over $100,000 per person to set up at East Lismore, for example. If there's 200 people there, that's over $20 million just setting it up before anyone goes in there. Now, if they do it in Hepburn Park, after 5 years of operation, they have to remove it. So that's all that money wasted, just thrown away. So if they do it on private land, they can leave it there forever, and we can use that as a permanent staging point for the many things that we have. For example, flood 2017, we've had the drought, we had the fires, we've had dust storm even in there, the COVID, all this stuff, and more floods in 22. Each time we have an event like that requires support, we've had the RFS set up in tents up in Alstonville. We can have them at a staging point that's set up with plumbing, power and sewerage. And every time there's an event, we're ready for it. We still are not ready for that. We don't have that. And it makes no sense to me to try and put temporary things all over the place that cost millions and then throw that money away, and then we don't have it again for the future. So let's do something permanent and have it forever and keep that. That's what we're trying to do. And there's a lot of things behind that, and that's a simplistic view, but the housing is essential. And I think doing it on one big site, you can have a section of emergency housing, a section of housing where people are bringing their homes, transporting their homes from North and South Lismore that want to move out with the land swaps. You have another section for new housing, and in between all that, you get Landcom building affordable housing. So you can address most of our housing issues in one big development, and I think that's probably going to be the way forward, but that's up to the NRRC to get it going.
Okay, I see. And so what you're saying is you don't believe in the concept of temporary housing. You believe in permanent housing that will be available for people in disaster situations. Is that right?
No. I do believe in the emergency housing, which is your temporary housing, but we're over 10 months in and they haven't got started on it. We're way past the point of emergency. So there's people in accommodation all over the place. It might not be suitable accommodation, but they're in accommodation, and it's very expensive accommodation. One of the issues is that, you want to build 50 pods or something up there, and we've got over 100 homes available for rent all over the place. Now, they might not be in the best spots or most suitable, but it's better than nothing at all. And these places have 3 and 4 bedrooms in them. So it'd be much cheaper, for example, as I quoted that over $100,000 per person figure. So you could rent, even at expensive rent, let's say $700 a week for a 3-bedroom in North or South Lismore, even if it's down there. That over, what's that, $36,400 a year, so that's $72,800 over 2 years. So you could rent out that house, say 3-bedroom house, for $72,000 or $73,000 rounded up, for 2 years, and let's a family of 3 taking up 3 bedrooms living there for 2 years, right? And then also pay all the extras, because that $100,000 doesn't even count the cost of them staying there. So that would cost considerably less than the setup cost for something that's temporary, and the places would all be rented out, and all these people would be immediately under a nice roof with a garden, a lot of space between the houses, not right in each other's pockets, and a much more stable sort of environment for 2 years straight away, not waiting months and months. So even if we start today, it's going to take at least, I think, 5 or 6 months for them to let people move into when they set up new sites. And that's the problem we have. It's not emergency housing anymore. It's just a ridiculous option.
Okay. Thank you. And moving on, do you mind? I'd like to talk about some of the other issues that you've brought up with Lismore City Council in the past. You've obviously had some controversial decisions that you've brought to council, one being Dunun Dam. Would you mind just explaining your position on the Dunun Dam? I know that, it's received a lot of attention, especially in the local environmental groups and the community, some of the lefties that it seems like you talk about on your Facebook page.
I love a lefty, I mean, I consider this program and yourself left, and, it's Monday Fun Day, and I thought I was going to come and get, maybe the butt of some of your jokes. I thought that would be funny. So that's
we
why
can tell some jokes. No worries.
I don't mind
if you want to tell me a joke about the Dunun Dam, I'm well keen.
I don't think there's any joke out there, to be honest. But on Dunun Dam, so in my role as Rouse County Council councillor, I put the Dunun Dam back on the table for their future water plan. The reason I did that, that was in the first meeting I attended in February. The reason I did that is because it was taken off last term, which means we're not going to look at it, we're not going to consider it, we're not going to do anything. We're just going to bury our heads in the sand and pretend we don't have a possible solution for our water security. Basically, our water quality is very good for us, but our water security problems. We have a shortage of water in this area. And the best option that we can see is a dam. It's not necessarily a dam at Dunun, but that's the only one we're looking at the moment. After they tried to do one at Federal many years ago. You probably know about that if you've been around. And I think Olivia Newton-John and a group of people protested and stopped that, so I moved to Dunun. So it's always been a contentious issue, but we need a dam. And what we've done with that motion is to allow Rouse to spend some money to do the cultural heritage study, which wasn't completed previously. It was the one that was done was peer reviewed and was considered inadequate and incomplete. So we haven't got a complete cultural heritage assessment or study to be able to make an informed decision. And that's what the motion does. It doesn't say build the dam. It says let's finish the study. It also requires the environmental study to be done. And when that comes back to council, at that point they will decide whether or not to continue with the dam. It hasn't been decided to build the dam. It's only been decided to finish the studies to consider whether or not we can build a dam, and if we can, at what level. For example, if a 50 gig dam is going to inundate cultural heritage sites, then maybe a 20 gig dam may be suitable and acceptable to the public. So that's what this study should inform the Rouse County Council of, and be able to make that decision. And that's not expected to come back till after the September 2024 election. So it's the next term, and I probably won't even be on Rouse. So we could have a whole different structure of the Rouse County Council and the general purpose councils that make up Rouse, the Lismore, Byron, Ballina and Richmond Valley.
Okay. So what you're saying is that you could support the dam, but what you want is more information so that you can make a more informed decision, and the Rouse County Council can make a more informed decision. Is that correct?
Yeah, 100%. But I actually said I do support. So I support a dam, but whether or not it's going to be at Dunun at what level depends on the studies. And I actually said during the meeting on record, you can go back and watch the discussion there when the speakers were speaking. I'll be the first one leading the charge. If we're going to wipe out some serious, extensive cultural heritage, I won't accept that. And that's not who I am. But if there's an opportunity to put the dam there, and I believe there is, because I've seen some studies and I've seen a lot of information, I will support the dam. And I think the majority of the community wants the dam or a dam. And I guess not necessarily at Dunun, but everyone wants a dam because we know the water security issues. We nearly had it. We ran out of water, I think they're close to a couple of years back. So when we had the drought, and people don't like to run out of water. It's just uncommon. It's nonsensical in a society that we live in, and we're the wettest area in New South Wales. I think we're the most flood affected in the country. And all the engineers, I go to conferences and seminars, but there's one thing they always say: when it's falling, you catch it. So all that rain we had in 2022, where is it? It's gone. We've still only got 14 gigalitres at Rocky Creek Dam. It's crazy. And our area is growing substantially. We need more water.
So that's the joke. Hey, Big Rob, we've got it. It's that we live in a region that's flooding and we still don't have appropriate water resources. There you go. We found it.
It makes no. It is. It's comical. Yeah, it is. But it's something that we need to be able to address in a way that doesn't upset everyone. And there's always, no matter what you do in council, everything, even if you're putting up a little awning over your car, you're going to upset someone, a neighbour or something, or someone. There's always opposition, but we need to get through that because the region needs water and we need to address it because Rouse covers is regional or a county, so 4 councils, and we need that water addressed somehow. And we've got to and groundwater. We need more than one solution. People mention recycled water, groundwater, or what's it called from the ocean? I've just gone completely bang. Desalination. So desalination, it was going to be down in Byron Bay, down your end of town in the national park down there. There's many koalas identified at the site that's been selected to look at that. And, there's going to be if that goes any closer, that's going to be heavily protested when we get to that. So if we took and left the Noon Dam off the table and then we go look at desalination, then it's going to be protested and potentially blocked down Byron Way. We've got to either find another site or not do that. Then we're left with groundwater and recycled water. And recycled water, groundwater, there's not enough of it. We always need at least 2 options. But recycled water, the word itself explains it's recycled water, so it needs a primary source that you can recycle. So what's that going to be? So if we only got 14 gig in Rocky Creek Dam, and we're recycling water, we're going to run out of water because recycled water doesn't bring 100% of the water back. Some of it gets used, evaporates, gets leaked out in pipes, gets wasted. You end up with no water if there's no rain. So we still need the tanks. We still need people to use less water. We're still trying to educate everyone to use less water and don't waste it because it's a very important resource. Even when it is raining and everything, try and store it, keep it for when you do need it. They say keep it for a rainy day. Keep it for a non-rainy day, there's another joke.
Okay, thank you. And moving on, again, I feel like you got a lot of attention for the vote that you brought, or the motion rather, about potentially not handing the land back to the Widjabawable people with the sleeping lizard. Did you want to comment on that? I feel like that was one of those moments where, you became quite a controversial figure in the area, and I'd love to hear your point of view and your experience of the whole thing.
I was a controversial figure long before I even put that motion. That was the big motion at Lismore City Council in February. So February was a big month for me at both councils. So I put that motion. It was expected that would have gone through, but unfortunately, the Krieg team got a bit nervous because of the big protest, the number of people in the gallery, the number of speakers, the hammering on social media in the lead up to that. And, inexperienced in councils also, there's a bit of nervous. And the vote ended up being 10-1 against me. And I stood my ground. And I can tell you now that when that comes back, I genuinely believe that the vote will be the other way with almost exactly the same thing. Now, I never said not to give the land back because it's not a give back anyway, it's a hand back or anything like that. It's a gift. That land is not Crown land, which is where the hand back native title stuff applies. And it's not recognising all the rights were extinguished many years ago because it was privately owned. And then that land was sold to council, and it's now community land, which means everyone owns it. So the ratepayers, everyone, including non-Aboriginal people. So that land was going to be gifted to our local Aboriginal people, but we don't know who to give it to because there's arguments amongst the Aboriginal groups of who's the recognised, traditional custodians here. Some are trying to say the same people who are on the native title claim, which is a federal thing. Others are trying to say the local bloodline groups. And it's not for us to decide. It's for the Aboriginal people to decide. All we need is an entity. That motion, all it was trying to do was clarify all the issues, make the land safe because we have a big cliff face without a fence. We have a mine that isn't mapped that could potentially subside and kill people. And we have potential detonators still on the site. We've had someone injured there years ago that cost a lot of money in compensation. The guy lost an eye and I think damaged his left arm in that incident and got paid a lot of money back in the 90s, I think it was. And I think it will cost millions of dollars today if something like that happens. Imagine us giving the land to the Aboriginal people and the child dies, then we'll imagine the headlines then. So we need to also make it safe. That motion tried to find a way to do it because Lismore City Council doesn't have the funds and ratepayers shouldn't foot the bill for giving away land So we tried to find the funds using the section of that land which isn't culturally significant but is R1 zone to try and make some money somehow, potentially building homes for Aboriginal people that can be sold to pay for the maintenance and the fixing up of the cliff, the mine, and the detonators issues, which is going to be millions of dollars to address that. Now, if we give it away as it is, we're going to have to make them fence it off until they pay for it. So it's either give bad land away that can't be used and we have to stop anyone using it until it's made safe, or we make it safe and give it away in pristine condition so it can be used immediately. And that's what I was trying to do. And the people didn't allow that to come out because they wanted it to be big, bad Rob trying to take land away from Aboriginal people. Not my sense. I'm happy to give the land away. Any community land away that isn't being used by the community is costing council money. And if we can give it away to an Aboriginal group who's going to use it and make it nice and let people go on country and learn about Aboriginal cultural heritage, why wouldn't you support that? And that's exactly what was trying to happen back in February last year, and I will still fight for that going forward and still am.
And you spoke about how Steve Krieg and his team, they kind of got cold feet with all of the protests. Does that mean that you had a discussion with Steve Krieg and members of his party about voting a different way on that motion?
Yeah, well, everyone discussed that before the meeting, and I think the Krieg ticket stood on supporting progressing North Lismore Plateau, and this thing wasn't going to hinder that, but the requirement is to use that land also to provide access to the rest of the North Lismore Plateau development. So either way, it's going to have I think it's an access track for fire, or can't remember what they actually exactly, let's call it another road coming from the Nimbin Road side up the hill, because you can't have only one way in and one way out. If there's a massive fire, you're going to have all sorts of problems. So we're still going to have to do something with the road and access coming in from the other side. But we need to do it, things in a way that isn't going to upset everyone, So it's not just people wanting to develop North Lismore Plateau, or the Aboriginal people want to protect sections of cultural heritage. And there's also a couple of people who want to stop all development up there completely, which is hopefully that doesn't happen. But there's got to be a balance in there somewhere, which is what we're trying to find and achieve. But on that day in February, I think the pressure was high in the council chamber. There was the meeting was adjourned for a few minutes and everyone went out the back, and everyone was quite distressed because they didn't, no one had experienced that level of pressure before. It was quite an interesting day, actually. It was the biggest protest I've ever seen on council land. But most people in the chamber, most speakers, most comments on social media, most deleted comments on social media. So there was quite a few offensive comments directed at me. But yeah, it was a lot of pressure, and I can understand why a new council would vote the way they did. People tried to say, please don't vote for this, don't vote for this. I said, no, it's my motion. I'm going to stand my ground. That's why it's a 110 vote against me. And because I stood my ground, I mean, it's coming back. The decision is not to not do anything or to, either way, it's got to come back, because the motion that was done last term, I call it a wishy-washy motion. It doesn't say anything. It just says give the land away. It doesn't say who, how, when, what. It doesn't address the safety issues. It's just, I call it wishy-washy. That's what I refer to it in the council meetings, because it's not clear. And you can't give away land, community land, just like that. It's supposed to be done arm's length and available to everyone equally. You can't just pick a community section of the community and give it away. You just can't do it. So we've got to address that issue as well. And it takes a lot of work. It's not easy.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Big Rog, for coming on the show. Very excited to hear more about your segment that you've got going on. Can you give me a little plug so that people can tune in?
Yeah, Big Rob Uncensored on, it's going to appear on it's called The Long Lunch. That's Nora Vidler-Blanksby. She's a living legend in this area. She's been doing radio for many years, and she started back up a few years ago on Richmond Valley Radio, 88.9 FM. They're set up down there at Woodburn. So that show will be at 12:20 p.m. every Monday, starting from the 23rd of this month. That's when Nora comes back from her holiday. And she asked me to come on at 12:20 p.m. every Monday. So in the week, the Monday before the council meetings, which are on the second Tuesday of the month, I'll be talking about what's come on. And on the Monday after, I'll be talking about what happened, and in between, talking about key issues in the weeks in between. So I think people will be interested. They can submit questions to Nora through a program, and she'll put questions to me. I'm happy to take on any questions. We didn't script this. You just ask me whatever you wanted. I'm happy to answer anything. I don't hide behind anything. People make comments. I hide behind social media. I don't. I just don't have the time to tolerate what I consider disrespect. I've gotten too busy. But this radio program will allow another way for people to get in touch with me if they can't do it through social media, and ask their questions through Nora, who's very respected in the area for doing her program, as you are. So that's why I agreed to go on your program.
Oh, thank you. Well, I do appreciate it, and yeah, I think, thank you for coming on the show, and thanks for all our listeners for tuning in. Big Rob, I hope you have a good afternoon, and everyone listening, you'll have more great tunes here on Monday Fun Day.